today. This is the first College of Education Research Colloquium of the new semester, so we're excited to have you all here. We've got two presenters today, well actually more than two, but Professor Brenda Capobianco, her colleague Chell Nyquist are going to talk first about building a community of practice through the Sled partnership, and then Professor Luciana de Oliveira here is going to talk about what's the problem, the language demands of word problems for English language learners. And the format, for those of you if you haven't been to one of these before, the two presenters each take about a half an hour roughly to present their work. We'll have a transition between the two, and we may have a couple of minutes for questions there, but we'll hold most of the questions and discussion for the end for both presenters. Okay? Great, so I'll turn it over to you guys. You're on.
Thank you. As Dr. Lehman said, I'm Brenda Capobianco. I'm in the College of Ed, Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm also affiliated appointment, a courtesy appointment in Engineering Education. I am one of the co-PIs of the project and also the co-director of the project.
And I am Chell Nyquist, and I am the Sled project manager.
And Sled actually, Chell actually comes from the College of Engineering in the School of Engineering Education, and therefore has a great deal of experience with engineering, which was critically important with our project. There are two purposes to our presentation today. The first one is to inform members of the college and also members of the Purdue community a little bit more about what the Sled partnership is. We hear a lot of the faculty say, well, we don't know really what's involved, so we're hoping this presentation provides a more informed perspective of what the partnership is about. And the second purpose is to show how we are trying very hard to align a theoretical framework to the work that we are doing within and across the partnership. And hence the title is Building a Community of Practice Through the Sled Partnership.
So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce you to the what is a math science partnership, because that is what our grant actually is. And the math science partnership is a response to concerns over the performance of children's scores in math and science. And the goal of it is to engage institutions to partner with K-12 schools to affect deep, lasting improvement in K-12 mathematics and science education.
And this MSP is a national MSP. You may have heard of MSP at the state level. That funding comes from the Department of Education, whereas this is coming from the National Science Foundation.
And at the time when we were funded, there were 145 of these. Of them, 44 of them are a targeted partnership, and I'll explain that in just a second. And of those, 19 focused on science, which is what we are trying to focus on, and there are actually only 4 that are focusing on our targeted grade level. And the funding is about 8% of all submissions were approved for funding during the year that we were funded. So a targeted MSP is where you're actually focusing on a particular grade level or at a particular junction in their education or within a specific disciplinary focus of mathematics or science. So in our cases, we have a double targeted, so we're targeting grades 3 through 6, and we are also focusing on science. There are 5 features that you need to engage in with an MSP project. First off, it needs to be partnership driven, so you need to have a relationship among the higher education institutes and K-12 schools and other partners. You are trying to increase the number, the quality and diversity of teachers that are teaching math and science. You are trying to engage students to develop these challenging courses and curricula in math and science and to continue to offer them. You are trying to broaden the knowledge of how students are actually learning, so you're using evidence-based design and outcomes in your research. And you're trying to instill an institutional change at the grade school level and at higher education institutions, and to make sure that the program will continue on even after funding has ended.
The overall aim of this respective partnership is to increase grade 3 through 6 student learning of science by developing an integrated engineering design-based approach to elementary school science. The notion of engineering design is quite new. It's actually quite novel for elementary school science. And Indiana is one of 24 states that have adopted standards at the elementary school level that focus on engineering design as a means of learning science. So we chose to focus to use this process blended with inquiry to help build students' understanding and knowledge of science. If given the necessary tools and resources, cross-disciplinary support, and instructional time, could elementary intermediate school teachers, meaning grade 3 through 6, effectively improve student science achievement through an integrated curriculum based on the use of the engineering design process? This is the premise through which we are going in and hopefully learning and gaining new knowledge about.
So we have a number of partners involved in our project. First, we have deans and faculty associated with the Colleges of Education, Engineering, Science, and Technology here at Purdue. We are also housed over in the Discovery Learning Research Center, so we have a partnership with them. And then we're also out in 4 different school districts across the state. So we have the Urban and Lafayette School Corporation. Then we have 2 rural school districts in Plymouth and Taylor. And then we have it's designated urban fringe in Tippecanoe School Corporation. Then we also have a couple of community partners with Subaru and Delphi. And then there's also a Plymouth Foundry up in Plymouth, Indiana. So the broader impact for this project is that we are engaging 60 STEM faculty here at Purdue over the life of the project. We are going to target 100 pre-service and 200 in-service teachers to incorporate them into our program. We're going to reach out to approximately 5,000 students. And by the end of the project, we hope to incorporate a new local teacher induction program, as we will have a cyber-enhanced repository of our best practices, assessments, and curricular resources, which is our cyber platform, which is sledhub.org. And then we also have an enhanced approach to teacher professional development and preparation.
Like many large-scale projects, we have what we call partnership goals. And if you notice the language and the way we presented the text, you'll see how this mirrors the 5 essential features that Chell just mentioned earlier. We want to create a partnership among the university STEM faculty, our school partners, and administrators in an effort to improve science education in grades 3 through 6 through the integration of engineering design in science teaching and learning. There's the partnership goal. The second being the ability to enhance quality, quantity, and diversity of both in-service and pre-service teachers prepared to utilize design as a means to teach science through these respective design projects. And the third goal is to adapt, refine, and test existing project and design-based curricular materials and tasks, and where necessary, develop new ones. The primary goal here is to invite the teachers to leverage what they're currently doing and build on that so they can enhance their practice and understanding of teaching science through design. We want to avoid the add then stir approach. We want them to leverage what they're doing because we believe the elementary school teachers we're working with are doing good science teaching. We just want to enhance that with them. The last, like many funded projects, you must generate evidence-based outcomes that contribute to our understanding of how teachers teach science through design and how young students effectively learn science concepts through design-based activities. Our timeline looks as follows. We're in the second full year of implementation. So years 1 and 2 are primarily the development of resources and professional development activities and programs, and the development of design teams, and the development of our research agendas, and the integration of these respective activities in grades 5 and 6. So our focus is primarily on grade 5-6, so we're in the second year of the grade 5-6 teachers implementing tasks that they learned about last year and perhaps have implemented before. Our second 2 years, or years 3 and 4, will continue with the same process, but we'll be transitioning into grade 3 and 4. I know that sounds a little bit out of sync, but we believe the STEM faculty appreciate this greatly because STEM faculty are assisting and working and collaborating with elementary school science teachers in learning the standards and learning the principles and concepts that are cognitively appropriate for a grade 5-6 child. To start at grade 3-4 could be problematic from the standpoint that that's developmentally very challenging to come up with the materials. So we thought at grade 5-6, there's a little greater probability of them hitting more intense or more rigorous curriculum or science concepts. Once they understand that process, they can then, for lack of better words, simplify it for grades 3-4. In year 5, we hope to expand the partnership and the integration of these tasks for grades 3 and 6 in all schools and sister or satellite schools across the state of Indiana.
So here we want to go ahead and introduce what our model is for engineering design that we're using in this project. And we've broken it down to make it so that it's age and grade appropriate. And we've identified 5 stages or phases of the design process. And the first is to go ahead and to identify the problem. And that involves identifying who a client is, what their needs are, what sort of criteria, constraints need to be considered in the problem. The second stage is to go ahead and share and develop a plan. So first, the students will go ahead and create an individual plan of what they think they can do to solve this problem. And then they'll get together in teams and they'll come up with a team solution. And once they've come to an agreement upon what they think their solution should be to this problem, they'll go ahead and they'll actually create and test an artifact or a process. As most of ours have been physical artifacts that they're developing, or it's a process that they can actually visualize by watching it, by creating different layers or whatever. And after they've tested it, then they go ahead and they communicate the results back to the class to share the knowledge of what science did they utilize and incorporate to create their design. And then also based upon the design, well, what science did they learn from that? And once they've done that, then they have the opportunity to go back and redesign and improve upon their solution. And then they go through this process again.
So through this work, Chell and myself and a teacher talked about what are some of the reoccurring features. And so these are some of the features we begin to see in the pedagogical practice and what teachers share with the children, but also the type of features the design teams are looking at as well.
Right, so some of these are that it needs to be client-driven and goal-oriented. So there needs to be someone that you're actually trying to solve the problem for. You want to provide an authentic context, so you want to give them a real-world situation that an actual practicing engineer may be exposed to. You want to be sure to incorporate constraints, so you want to be able to limit the design. And you want the students to be using materials, resources, and tools that are familiar to them. So you don't want to introduce oddball techniques or terminologies that some engineers may be using, but it's something that they're not familiar with. And you want to require that the solution is an artifact or a process. And you want it so that you can yield more than one solution. Is you don't want it to be a closed problem where everyone comes up with the exact same solution. And you also want it to involve teamwork. So you want the students to work as a team to come up with their solution.
So the best way to illustrate this is to give you an example of a task that we have children engage in.
So this is one where we've invented a company called Boiler Biotech, and they're a company located in Warsaw, Indiana, which is a very popular location for prosthetics. And this company needs assistance in designing a prosthetic leg for a young child so that he or she can kick a soccer ball. And the challenge is for you to design and test a prototype of a prosthetic leg that mimics the same movement of a hinge joint. So within this design brief, as you can see, is we've come up with a client, which is the company, is we have a real world context, is we want a student to be able to kick a soccer ball just so that they can act like other children their age. And we've included constraints. So we want it so that the prototypes look exactly like or behaves like a hinge joint. So it behaves the way that a knee actually should work.
So this is a small vignette from an actual larger design brief. There's more information that's added to the context of this respective problem, and the design teams actually have multiple pages to their lesson plan. So like many teachers, this is objective-driven, standards-based, there's a procedure, there are resources available, so the design teams go, and I'm talking about the faculty design teams, go to great lengths to create a very comprehensive lesson such that it can be given to a teacher and the teacher can go ahead and implement this in his or her classroom.
So these are just some examples of us actually going out, and this is while we were testing and designing this. So here we actually have one of our participant teachers helping students out. And then the other two photos is we have a couple of our STEM faculty that went out to the school, and they're actually engaged in helping the teacher do this design activity. And show mentoring and engage the students.
We try very hard to allow the STEM faculty to get out and pilot test, or what Todd Kelly likes to say is kick the tires on the lesson to find out what works and doesn't work. And Dr. Eichinger and Chelsea Denkenbrink created, in collaboration together, we came up with a task on compost and the process for making compost within a column. Well, we pilot tested that in a school to find out what works and what doesn't work so that we could get the kinks out of it and ready to scale up to deliver that with all the teachers. So this is an example of some of the resources that have been created so far. On the far left column are over 15 to 17 tasks that have been co-created by Sled partners. That includes teachers and design team, faculty members. Chell, myself, Dr. Kelly have created these such that they're standards-based, objective-driven. They are designed for the students to use the design process to, for lack of a better word, solve the problem. In over 74 classrooms, there have been 17 tasks that have been implemented up until this point. So these numbers represent the number of classrooms across our 4 or 5 school partners that are implementing these tasks. And we've just abbreviated some of the names of them so that we can remember what it is. Sometimes bottle erasers is kind of like the artifact. Compost column is the process, that kind of thing. So that just represents some of the resources that have been generated that are on our hub, our repository for where this work is being stored. The Sled design team, these teams are composed of faculty from the College of Science, from the College of Engineering, and the College of Technology. We also have representatives from the local schools, so they're what we call master teachers that join together, and we think all of these partners are critically important to developing these type of resources and materials. These are pictures of faculty getting up in front of their colleagues and literally teaching the lesson to us so that they get a chance to practice. And then we give them feedback and they give us feedback, and there's this interplay or interaction where we get to talk about what works, what doesn't work, how do we make this more appropriate for grade 5, grade 6, how do we make it so it can be done in 30-minute blocks of time, and so on and so forth. So they get a chance to try it out. And then some of the members, this is really quite exciting for me personally, these are pre-service teachers that then joined the methods class so that they could learn about how to do this themselves in the methods class. We're going to go through this a little fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the stages of the in-service teacher professional development is they go to a 2-week summer institute where they pair up with these design faculty and actually learn about the activities that have been created. And then they also have several follow-up sessions and online activities where they get continuous professional development throughout the year.
And these are some of the pictures of the teachers with method students working together collaboratively in the summer program. So here's an example of a pre-service teacher working with 2 practicing teachers creating a windmill or a wind turbine. And then here is a pre-service teacher with a practicing teacher learning about the measuring unknown salts and the temperature of them to create a hot cold pack for a child who's been injured. And then these are new members of our team from Riverside and Lafayette School Corporation working with a solar cell for a lesson that we call the solar tracker. So we try to pepper it with some pictures of most recent events this past summer as well as the summer before.
So the pre-service teacher component is we select a group of 4 to 8 pre-service teachers to participate during the 2-week summer institute. And then we also have them participate in a special section of the elementary science methods course where they're engaged in engineering design and they actually implement that in throughout the semester in their field experiences.
So they apply to be part of the summer program and they get paid and they work in the summer program, then they come to the methods class. So it's very important that they register for the methods class so we know they're coming in, and then they become workers as well as teachers. They're treated like every other teacher there in the summer workshop. So there's this heightened level of professional experience for them. And these are our pre-service teachers working with children in the schools, and they're also working in the lab here at the DLRC, which I think is just heaven because it's the state-of-the-art lab condition, and we're very, very lucky to be there. So they're actually engaging in tasks that they will then eventually assist the teachers in teaching. So there's this co-generation of knowledge of how to teach science through design. The research is in 3 tiers or 3 domains. We look at the partnership development in terms of what factors help support the teacher's implementation, what factors help promote sustainability through academic support, administrative support, and then what kind of impact is this making across all SLED partners. We have teacher learning, which is what I'm directing, and we look at how teachers conceptualize design, and more importantly, what do they implement? How do they implement? What pedagogical strategies do they employ? How do they reflect on their implementation? And what are some of the challenges that they experience at the classroom level? And lastly, we look at student learning in terms of children's conceptualizations of design, new knowledge that they may construct regarding science and engineering, and the transfer of learning. How enduring are the new concepts that they learn? The theoretical framework, which is the crux of what is driving the partnership and our research, is this notion of situated learning. Learning is embedded within activity, context, and culture. There's a social interaction that takes place among the children, among the teachers, among the STEM faculty, and we believe that is a context for them to learn about how students learn science, but how teachers teach science through design. Knowledge needs to be presented in authentic context, hence the Boilermaker company needs your help. We try to put this in authentic context, and the social interaction and collaboration are essential. We look at community practice from the standpoint that we believe we're trying to develop and sustain a community of practice where we embody certain beliefs and behaviors to be acquired. We hope that everyone that's part of the partnership understand that we want to improve or understand how to improve teaching science through design, and the long-term goal is to improve students' achievement in science. Learners become more active, engaged within the culture, and eventually assume the role of an expert, a practicing engineer. In other words, all the activities we create mirror the skills and the practices that an engineer would employ himself or herself, and that we want the children to be exposed early on so that they can develop the disposition to think like a scientist or an engineer. It's not that we want them to become one. I mean, that would be wonderful, but to develop the process of thinking that way could be beneficial across all disciplines. So what is a community of practice? According to Levin Wagner, this is a community that builds a shared practice as members engage in a collective process of learning. We're all on the path of trying to generate new knowledge. Groups of people who share a concern, a set of problems, a passion about a topic, and who deepen their knowledge and expertise in this area by interacting on an ongoing basis. David, you were talking earlier about your team meeting on a regular basis. So it's not just once a month or once a semester. It's something where you need to meet on a regular basis so you can share your concerns and what this could look like and whether a grade 3 child would like this or a grade 4 would like this. For the SLED partnership, this means that all the partners are passionate about learning how teachers teach and how students learn science through engineering design. There are 3 dimensions of community practice that you may have read about or you may know about, and so my goal is to try to effectively communicate these principles and try to align them with our partnership as best I can. Mutual engagement is the premise of a community of practice. And what I mean by that is that everyone that is a partner is included in what matters and how decisions are made. So it's very important that everyone's mutually engaged from the onset of what the primary goal is. The joint enterprise includes this notion of negotiating at a communal basis, that when we begin to meet in smaller teams or a larger cohort, that there's a safe space that we can negotiate what is being learned and how we make meaning of that. So if you look at our infrastructure and you came over to the DLRC, you would see this organizational chart that shows this executive board, a leadership team, design teams, an advisory board, our SLED schools, our industry partners, and external advisory board. The point being is that all these subgroups work together and interact with one another under the premise of being jointly and mutually negotiating or mutually interested in what we can do in terms of generating new knowledge. The shared repertoire is what we hope is taking place and what can be gleaned from this respective work. In other words, over the long time of the partnership, we hope that resources are being created. These resources come in different faces and different images. It can be everything from tools and curriculum to behaviors to schedules to routines that can be created and can scale up and be used in other school systems and other university programs. So an example of some of the things we feel we're recreating for shared repertoire is our design model, the tasks, the teachers' plans and resources and things that the teachers are inventing. We also believe the research that's being jointly coordinated by the graduate students, the faculty, and eventually the design teams are something that's going to become a repertoire of materials that others will be able to access. And these other features show how we are trying to align those particular features to our respective partnership. So we've talked a little bit about, oh wait a minute, I need to show you this lovely chart. This is one that I just started reading about. And Levin Wagner's argument is that to develop a community of practice, you go through stages or phases. And therefore, in the potential phase is where things are just being discovered, people are being recruited, and there's a common ground or goal that's being achieved and established. Delivery or deliver is taking place where it's coalescing. All those goals are starting to merge together, and there's the development of resources that are then implemented or distributed. The focus and expand is when the group starts to mature, expand, accept more members, create more artifacts. And then the ownership is when things are let go and that micro-communities begin to develop. And then lastly is transformation. This could be the end of the project, where we begin to let go and allow the schools to create their own micro-communities or new communities of practice. We believe that, we were talking about this today, and I don't know if my colleagues, David and Jim, would agree with me, coalescing and maturing. I think that's where we are. We're going to be recruiting more teachers from grade 3 and 4 in the coming year, and that I believe that we are starting to fine-tune some of the shared repertoire that we're trying to create. Here are the data sources from our respective research agendas. And I'm going to pull out this middle one to talk about teacher learning, very briefly, to give you just a little bit of a taste of the kind of data we're collecting. Our questions regarding teachers, there's quite a few of them. The bottom line is we want to find out how teachers are conceptualizing design and how do they construct and implement this respective curriculum. We also want to learn about the pedagogical practices they employ and how do they reflect on some of these and sustain these methods over time. What are the challenges they experience, and are their challenges and ideas and solutions cross-pollinated across the respective schools? What differences exist in these challenges? And so we're trying to learn from the teachers what's working and what doesn't work and what kind of challenges they face and how they address them. So here are the measures that we use. We employ interviewing at the beginning and the end of the school year. We have document analysis of multiple documents we collect from the teachers and collaborative reflection meetings and sessions that we have with the teachers and their own making meaning or reflections of their respective work. This chart represents features of the design process the teachers reported very early on prior to implementation a year ago this time. The green bars represent the grade 5 teachers, the purple bars represent the grade 6 teachers. And what you see is that the teachers were able to characterize the engineering design process from the standpoint that there's a problem, and that the students must plan some type of solution, whether it be a prototype or a process, and that they construct this and then they test it and then they reflect on it. The interesting thing is very little data about the problem scoping in terms of identification of a client and the constraints and the criteria and the materials. So there's some finer details that we need to work on. This notion of planning, there's emphasis on individual but little emphasis on team planning. However, when you go into the classroom, you see a lot of team planning. This notion of constructing seems to be a powerful process. However, testing the prototype and redesign and communication seem to be tertiary. What happens is the teachers, when they don't have enough time to redesign or have the children communicate, they cluster it together and call it reflection. They have the children reflect in a journal or just reflect out loud. So you're seeing some skipping of the steps. The challenges the teachers reported based on teacher teams. These are interdisciplinary teams of teachers. That means a humanities teachers with the science teacher and the art teacher. And these teams in green represent the grade 5 teams, and the grade 6 teams are represented in purple. The number one reoccurring challenge is time. Not having enough time to teach and not having enough time to plan the respective lessons. The other challenge is classroom management, meaning that when my students get into teams, how do I group them, but also how do I facilitate productive group activity instead of policing them? For some elementary school teachers, the notion of teaming is quite novel, which really surprised all of us. So it means teaching the teachers how to do cooperative learning or teaming or technical teams. The remaining challenges range from students' conceptual understandings to teachers' requests for the pedagogical techniques. They're hungry to learn how to improve notebooking skills with children and how to enhance children's ability to reflect on what it is they're learning or not learning. The pre-service teachers, I'm kind of excited about this because this is based on prior work I've done and I'm using different measures. Stages of concern inventory comes from the CBAM module, which is the concern-based adoption model, which actually comes from sociology and then was picked up in the field of technology education. So what I did is I took that model and adapted it for engineering. It's the series of stages a teacher may experience when learning about something novel or innovative. In this case, technology was used for the original CBAM, but we're looking at engineering design being somewhat novel. And these stages go from little concern to having ideas and wanting to adapt them in their meaningful practice. So I quickly want to show you, when we gave this instrument to the pre-service teachers in the fall, there was some information seeking. They wanted to learn more about it. Then there were 4 students that were moving further along in their level of concerns, being more like, I know this and now I want to implement it. At the end of the semester, all the students shifted to more mature levels of concern that a practicing teacher would have. The reason why this is bolded or italicized is because these 4 students represent 4 students that were in the summer institute prior to coming to the methods class. So there's something happening in the institute that develops their disposition, if not their beliefs, about becoming a teacher of teaching science through design. Lastly, the pre-service teachers' feedback forms. This is something Chelsea's currently using in her practice of learning how to teach the methods class. And basically, it's a Likert scale from 1 to 5, being low to high in terms of the level of interest in the task, the clarity in my instruction of the task, how useful do they find the task, any difficulty they have with completing the task, and lastly, do they envision using this task. And as you see over the course of the semester, we picked a task at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the semester, and interest is maintained, clarity is slightly improved, usefulness is improved, difficulty actually decreases over time because the more practice you have with the design process, the easier it becomes. And then the envision of using this in the future seems to improve and excite us about the potential of them using it in their own practice.
So the next steps that we're going to go through is to report our strategic actions taken in response to a site visit that the NSF had with our project earlier this year. We are going to be interacting with our external advisory board to get more feedback, more direction in the upcoming months. We want to share our research results with all the SLED partners, in particular the school partners. And we want to prepare for our transition to grades 3 and 4 from 5 and 6, and how do we sustain this 5-6 level of excitement.
And that is it.
Good, thank you. We could take a question or two now while Dr. De Oliveira transitions to get her presentation ready, but we'll have time at the end for discussion about both presentations.
Yeah, hi Brenda. I know you didn't have time to touch on student learning part in your research question, but what were some of the students' initial reactions to your implementation of this new approach?
The number one thing that we have data on is that the students are very excited and engaged in doing the task. So we know interest is very high and their attitudes toward completing the task are very high. We do have evidence of knowledge gains also, and that's based on knowledge tests that we've created, and those are with regards to specific tasks. The other thing we have learned is that children, when given an opportunity to do what's called a transfer task, which means a similar problem under the same umbrella of the original task, but on their own with a group of, outside of the classroom with a group of 2 other children, like 2 or 3 children, they actually can do very well with identifying the problem and the design of the actual artifact. So we know that problem scoping has been refined and they've done very well. People like Todd Kelly and Johannes Strobel are working closely on student learning.